enhancing your drawings in Revit. Now, you probably all signed up under the title Enhancing Your Detailed Drawings in Revit, and yes, we will be covering that. However, during the course of building this webinar, Brian Juge here came up with quite a few techniques that I think you're going to find a lot of fun to look at today. So, you know, bear with us. They're fun examples, and this is going to be a fun webinar to watch if you kind of keep a interested mind about it here. We will cover details shortly. My name is Stan Henney. I'm the Business Development Manager here at CAD-1 and a contemporary artist, yes. And Brian D. Juge, AIA, is one of our instructors and a working architect as well. So Brian, let's go ahead and get cranking.
All righty.
So our first slide among many here is the usual webinar slide to help everybody get going. You have to be on either telephone or mic and speakers depending on what you're listening on. There's the raise your hand button, which everybody's familiar with. And you can minimize the console by hitting the orange and white arrow to get it out of the way so you can see the whole screen. And lastly, if you do have questions, type them into the question box and we will answer them as much in context as we possibly can. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide.
I guess before we do that, just to make sure that you guys can still hear us, I think we already had that before, but if you wouldn't mind just raising your hands.
Hit the raise your hand button so we can.
Just to make sure. All right.
There's hands going up all over the world.
Yeah, then we know they're alive and they have a pulse too. That's also good.
That's good.
So they're at least paying attention. All right. So hands down, there we go. On to the next slide. Okay, so just kind of getting the topic. So we're going to review the basics of Revit lines, line work, graphics, and just get in here with what's going on within Revit. We're also going to get into the graphic styles and kind of explore that. And both of those areas are going to be kind of important for what we're covering today. The line work is going to be extremely important for getting into understanding what's going on when you're getting into your details, when you're doing certain things like what am I trying to think? Filled regions and stuff of that nature, because that's going to be kind of the bulk of when you're getting into your details and really coming in and building up your own stuff. We'll also look at the more into the detail components, what they have to offer as far as building that framework around, and then after that we'll get into creating elements that resemble what we have learned. Looks like we have a question here already. My screen just disappeared.
Can you raise your hand if you can see our screen? You should be seeing an agenda slide right now.
Okay, so that seems to be an isolated instance.
Hopefully it's just yours and not worldwide here.
Okay, so we're going to get into that. And then we're going to also start looking at pushing the envelope a bit more of what you might have seen in the past and really getting into an area that many of you probably haven't explored yet. And I apologize if this isn't quite what you're looking at, but I just say, hey, be patient and try to absorb where we're going with this and kind of the area that we're getting into. And I think you guys are going to see a lot of payback that you can leverage this in really making your Revit projects be unique. And before we get into that, though, I'd like to just do a couple quick polls like we always do on you know, who's out there. And so right now we've got pretty good numbers coming in. A little bit of where I thought we would be. I actually thought we'd see some more interior designers, but it doesn't seem to be. And with that, I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to close that and then share that for all of you to see. So you can see, hopefully you can see, that is being displayed for you. So we have like 64% architects, 19% drafters, 13% engineers, and 4% other, no interior designers. So we'll see what that is. And now I'm going to go in and hide that one, and I'm going to grab another one. What type of work is everybody doing? This will kind of give us all a little bit of background on where you guys are at as far as what kind of designs are going on. And again, it's primary. I know a lot of you guys might do commercial and residential and maybe some TI stuff, but just what's the primary bulk of your work right now, just to get a little bit idea of what we're seeing inside the field. So we've got a pretty good percentage of people voting in on that. So I'm going to close that now.
The largest part are commercial, it looks like, with a residential coming in a strong second.
Yeah.
The other categories kind of...
I'm still curious as to what the other is. So if anybody has done other for either your discipline or what kind of work you're doing,
type it in the question box.
I would love to. Yeah, we would love to see what's out there. All right, and then I've got one.
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. We got dairy design, and we all know what that is.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to come back to a couple polls later, but I'm going to get in here and now get into a little bit more of the bulk of the work that we're going to be doing. So with that, I am going to run on over to one of my other projects real quick, and can I get into looking at the graphics, and this is kind of where we're going to be going in here and looking at our details and stuff. But before I get into the details, what I want to do is start exploring the basics of Revit and how we get Revit to really start to talk and understand what's going on within the project.
Let me interrupt here because I know we have a few engineers and other disciplines on the line. You know, we hope that you know Revit well enough to kind of make the translation in what we show you on drawing details from, say, an architectural detail to a detail that works in your discipline. We know that the examples are architectural, but I'm sure you can make the switch and go, oh, that's pretty cool. I can use it in the details I have to do as well.
Yeah, that is important to point out. So I'm just going to start with some very simple objects and stuff within the file and get into what's going on with this file and how we can start really enhancing it within our drawing. So I'm going to go over to the Manage tab, and that's going to be one of the key areas that we're going to start to talk about and look at Revit to see what we can change. And in the Manage, there's two particular areas we want to look at. We want to start looking over here in the line styles, the line patterns, the line sizes, all this stuff right in here as one area. And the other area to get into is over here in the object styles, specifically under lines, but also under any of the objects you're looking at. So these are the two areas we're going to be looking at. And we're going to be looking at inside here, objects, the categories, and subcategories. Okay? So first I'm going to start with additional settings. So in here I've got my line styles to look at. And inside here, line styles, we just have our basic lines. This is going to be what's broken up. Now a lot of people, when they get into line styles, they're used to thin lines, wide lines, medium lines, and lines that are in here. And I've kept those in here. One of the first things that I usually go into my template and I do is I pump up these line weights. This by default, Y lines is a line 5, and I pump it up to a 6 or a 7 when I'm in here. Medium lines comes in as a 4 or 3, and I make it up a 4. So you'll find yourself when you're first starting to use your drawings inside of Revit, they come in really anemic, they're really lean. The line weights are just not popped up. They need to be really intensified as we're doing things in there. So what we need to do is look at this menu and pop it up. The other thing to look at is instead of going in and doing this thin line, medium line, fine line type thing that we do, what I've come into my template is I've set up the line weights and they're all based on the numbers. So as we come in here, an 01 is a 1. An 02 is a 2, and so on and so forth. And we could build that in here. And that makes it really easy for someone to understand what line weight they're picking. So a medium line, there's no such thing as a medium line in here. It's a line 4 or a line 10, all the way up from 1 to 16. So we have these different line weights in here.
Brian, you're moving kind of fast. We got a question from Matt. Where is that line styles menu located?
Yes, the line styles menu. So I'm going to hit cancel real quick. It's in the Manage tab. And in the Manage tab under Additional Settings, we get into line styles. You know what? Let me grab one of my useful tools in here. I'm going to grab my E-pointer just so I can play it along with everybody else.
Play the home game?
Play the home game. So yeah, we're going to go over here to the Additional Settings, and we pull down Additional Settings. We've got our line styles in here. Okay. We also got line weights and line patterns we're going to take a look at next. So I'll go in the Additional Settings, go down to Line Styles, and here I have all my line work in here. And we've got those. One of the other things you might want to change, just to let you know, just kind of a little tip, change beyond to hidden. That'll really help with foundation plans, things like that, because that comes in solid by default. And there's all the basic line types that you have in here. Now you might see this SW stuff. That has to do with those are actually Site Designer, or what used to be called SiteWorks line types. So we'll be covering that a little bit more next week on the topo line, but those are going to be additional ones I'm not going to mess with. But I really want to point out you have lines, which by default are the green lines that you have out of the box, and I wanted to show those out of the box. Medium lines, which by default are line weight 3, and then down here wide lines, which are line weight 6. And what I tend to do is I will stop using those, and I will try to remove those from the project completely and start getting into numbering these in here by the line projection weight itself. And then you could do black and blue or any color that you want in here, and then what the line pattern is going to be. And inside here we have the different patterns, so solid, align, hidden, all those other types of in here. And that's going to really make it easier to play with your project. But we have to have this understanding first. So that's the first area we're going to go. If you want to make a new one, you can go over here, hit new. In this case, I can make 09. It's going to be lines. And then I just come in here and make my next line weight for a 9, and I pump it up to 9. Again, it's all the way to 16. And so that's how we'd get it done.
Brian, in the early days of Revit, I guess back in before 2010, etc. This was one of the biggest questions. How do we make our Revit models, drawings, not look so, as you put it, anemic? Well, these are some of the ways you start moving in that direction.
Yeah, and just by initially pumping up these line weights, you'll start to see a little bit more richness into your drawings. There's still a bit more that we need to do, but at least we've got this as a starting point in here. The next thing to go and look at is down on that same thing, additional settings. We can come in here. We've got our line patterns. But I'm going to jump into line weights. Okay. Now, under line weights, these are the line weights according to the scale. So we have the model line weights that we're looking at in here. So if I'm picking a line 1 at 1-inch scale, it's a 0.003 line thickness, and that's what it's going to be at that scale. Now, some of these do not change as we're going over, but if you can see, like here, number 6, it's a 0.035, a 0.03, then it gets 0.25, and gets a little bit thinner depending upon the scale and how it changes across the drawing. So we get to see those change out here, and you can start tweaking this particular file to make the line weights read differently depending upon the scale that you're at.
And we have a really good comment from Mario for everybody to keep in mind as they're working with this and starting to use it. Mario mentions it is prudent to do a test plot with different drivers, PDF, etc., to make sure that all the line settings are actually useful. Sometimes, as he comments, sometimes you don't need 15 different lines when only 5 really read when printed. So keep that in mind. And then Kevin asks, is the Materials tab ever useful in conjunction with the lines?
Yes, the Materials tab is extremely useful. Not directly with the lines, but we're going to get into some of that, and I'll try to cover some of that. I'm not going to get into too much of that today, but we could talk about that. I'm not going to say that the Materials tab is not useful. It's extremely useful, and we need to have an understanding of that. But in a part for actually doing what our detail work is going to be, I'm going to leave the Materials tab off the table at the moment. But we want to look at this in here. Now, when we're going back and we're looking about drafting 101, hand drafting, you didn't have 16 pens. So getting to Mario's comment, and it's one I wanted to bring up, is that you only have anywhere, some offices say 3, 5 to 7 pen weights, and that's all we should be dealing with in here. So let's go back to the basics and get into, there should be 5 to 7 pen weights you want to look at. I've been drawing all of them in here, but I don't need them. They're not necessary. So I still want to stick to my 5 or my 7 pen weights, my fine, medium, my OT5s, my 1s, my 3, all those different pen weights. So whatever you have laying around your desk next to your bum wad, those are kinds of the pen weights you want to be looking at and really evaluating this process in here.
You mean your rapidographs?
My rapidographs, and I have them at home. I haven't touched them in years, but I've got my pilot pen, my sign pen, all those other things. They're still next to my desk, and I use those on a pretty heavily basis. So again, we're looking at, that's the kind of thing, that's the mentality that we want to have when we're working inside this project in there. All All right. So then we've got, your perspective line weights, how they're going to work, annotation line weights, how they would work. So it's just more of the same categories that we would have inside the model. So we've got that in here. All right. Then getting into the object styles, and it's a similar thing. So inside here, if you're looking at, wow, my doors are really not looking, the elevation swing looks a little bit too thin, maybe I want to pump that up. Maybe I want the openings to be pumped up, the panel swing. So I'll start looking at the line weights for this quality of work in here. So we really want to start looking at that. One of the ones that you might want to take a look at is over in walls. You've got the common walls, the wall sweeps, the corners, the hidden lines, and maybe pumping those up a little bit. Well, what a cut line is going to be, because the projection line and the cut line are relatively the same. Maybe you want to start pumping these up a little bit more and giving that a bigger thickness within your drawings as we're building that. Now, other things that we can go and do is you can start adding new subcategories. I'm not really going to get into this topic too much, but I want to point out that we can add more layers to any objects that you are building within your project. So if things aren't looking like, you start adding sub-layers to your families and really getting a different quality to the way your projects are going to look in here. So that is definitely a path that you can go down inside our project.
And real quick, because I want to try and get all your questions answered. We do these for you folks. Kevin says, I was asking more about the materials for line styles when he was talking about, is the materials tab ever useful to do with lines?
If I'm
and maybe you'll get to that shortly.
Yeah, well, I'm actually trying to think of what the question means. So, Kevin, are you asking, is this material tab pertinent to, in the material browser, pertinent to the line styles? Is that what your question is? Like, does this tab play into the line styles itself? And I'm going to say no, other than we get into things like surface patterns, and then line styles can start playing into here. But this is kind of pull up the line styles menu. All right. Oh, the material parameter over here for a line style. To be honest, I haven't quite putting a material parameter on a line style in my life. To do it, I haven't. I'll look into that. That's all I can say. I really haven't dove into that too much. And
certainly for the work we're doing in detailing,
yeah,
or at least we're going to talk about today, it's not a strong influencer.
Yeah, I'll go take a look at it, but not today. So let's get in there. All right. So the next thing we're going to get into is what I've got just a basic box, but I want to get in here and start looking at, what we're looking at in here and kind of the line weights that we're presented on with our project. So in here, I'm at a hidden line. So I'm going to go over here to this, and I've got the hidden line, and I've got the graphic display options. And this is another completely useful menu, is getting in here and really start looking at what's going on. So we're in hidden line, and we can start doing things like transparency and making different things transparent to start seeing hidden lines underneath. And that's going to be some nice things to see. We've also got things like shadows, so I can have it cast shadows, which is going to be basically on sunlight or something like that, or show ambient shadows, which will give us some different types of gradients in the corners and stuff that we can see, hey, I'm looking in a box rather than out of the box type of thing. But one of the ones I think that really gets underused that really can help us in our project is this guy right here for silhouettes. And what silhouettes does, so I'm going to take off the shadows at the moment because I'm just going to focus in on this. When I get into silhouettes, I can go in here and pick different line weights. And when I first start showing people this, the first thing I'm going to do is do a hidden line, because I want to show you what lines are affected in this particular view at this angle that we get in here. So when I hit apply, those are the particular lines out of the box that it's going to affect. We could see those on the screen, those dashed lines in here. So instead of being dashed, maybe I come in here and I make them a line 7. I hit OK. Now I can get some different quality to the building right away. What are we looking at? We're looking at, outside corners, right? Drafting in 3D 101. Outside corners should have a heavier line weight. Inside corners are a lighter line weight. And we're seeing, this is a pretty good example of that right here. Okay, now if we're seeing something that doesn't look right, we can go in and change that and make a bigger difference on it. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. So the first pass, I might go in and I might pump up my drawing just like this, just to give it some different quality that's in here. But we have another great tool that allows me to override the line weight of anything I want. Let's say I want a heavier edge on this line. Well, one of the things I can go and do is I can go into the Modify in here, and I've got this last tool right here. It's a great tool to have, and it is line work. It's kind of your last resort, but for every view you want to go and you can change the line work. So inside here, I can click this. I then am picking the line by category, but I can change it to a different line thickness. So I might come up and say, well, I want a 4. And I pick this line, and you can see it pumps that up to a bigger line weight. I can pump that one up, and I can pump that one up there and there just to give it a different quality, okay, just to bring it out. So if you're not taking the time on some of your renderings to come in and just do a couple little things to bring out the quality, bring out the richness a little bit more, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And when you go to print, you go, man, this looks really drab, and I'm really not seeing the quality I want. Take a couple more minutes. It shouldn't take too long, but to go in there and really start pumping up the line weights. Maybe we want to do that wrap. What's in the foreground? What's in the background? That we can start really presenting, really present how this shape is being presented as something that's close or far behind. I'm going to do this again because I think we lost somebody, so I'll go back through the process. When I come in here, the visual styles, I'm going to go to the graphic display options. So the way I can get that is right in here, or we have the graphic display, the edit button that's right in here. So I've got two places to do that. That's right down here or right up here. I can go open that menu, and then down inside I have this thing for silhouettes. And we can use the silhouettes to really pump up the line weight, and we really want to take a look at what's going on in there for our drawing. So we use that. Now if I go back to none, hit apply, it goes back to the way it was originally shown. Okay, so we can change this out. Again, I'll go back to 7, hit apply, really pump that up, and give myself another thing. This has been such a great thing, and you do this in a couple minutes, and just print out regular drawings. You don't have to change any of the line weights. Just doing that alone will make your drawings stand out a lot better. Okay.
I think we gotta want a fan in Ryan. He gives us a big thank you. Jock, we are going to show some of this in details shortly. Michael, stay with us on the elevations and so forth. I think you'll get some answers. If not, we'll get to it. And Shane, the graphic display options only modifies the lines in that view, correct?
Yes, this is only per the view that we have it in there. And even this particular tool here that we're looking at, when we go to use that, that's only in this particular view. When you go to duplicate this, you can have it actually not carry over the line work changes that were created in here.
And then Mario asked, please show how to revert lines back to default by selecting in parentheses by category after you alter the line work.
So yeah, that's a big one. You've changed the line. Maybe you came in here and you did a demolished line in addition to that, and you're like, what do? I don't want a demolished line in here. So one of the things you can do is come in here and go to by category and then find the lines that you did and change them back to the way they were. So I can change them back to the way they were. That is one way of getting it done. The other thing is okay, let's say you didn't remember what you did by category, but you're like, I changed some of these lines, but I don't remember what I did. Or which lines were changed. It's really hard to pick them out because if you don't know, you just don't know. It's really hard to do. So one of the things you can do is you can duplicate the view and then have it not carry over the line weight changes by doing it that way. Another last thing I want to show you, just kind of a technique, is if I want to show something that's closer or beyond, one of the things we can get in and do is I can select this object that's beyond, and then by right-clicking or override the graphics by the element, and then give it a halftone. And that's one of the things that you can take advantage of when you're in there to show something that's foreground, something that's background within the drawing. I think that's another important thing to show that we're getting into. So these are kind of the basic techniques for doing a lot of this stuff that we're getting into inside this project. Now the next part I'm going to get into is start getting into more of these drafting details and how they work inside our projects and what we're going to be doing in here. All right. So I'm going to run on over to a retaining wall at the kitchen, and I've got a typical detail that I've used in several of my projects in here. So this is a detail that we'll see inside our project for this this particular area. Now inside here, you'll see all these notes, and these aren't notes, these are all tags, okay? So as I'm coming in here, I can tag pretty much any element inside here, including like the ground, and it's going to give me what that particular item is, okay? So inside here, we've got the ground itself. Now, some of the things that I've done inside here is that I've got a way to put a heavy line, so I can unclick that, and then it takes it back down to the normal line weight. And you can see, just by adding this, I can get my heavy line thickness to that particular element and really get it to change or have it view in a different way.
And I do want to say that, I know you've got a poll coming up, but I do want to say to everybody that, you know, this won't be so much on, you know, how to create a detail from the start. We have a great three-part series on our YouTube video page and our archives page on our website that Brian Mackey did about a few months back. I think it was in the winter last year, on how to create details from the start. That's a great place to refer to if you're just wanting detail 101.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to throw that poll up right now so you can see it. That it goes over specifics on these details, on how to build them, the different parts. I'll get into a little bit of this, but I'm not going to cover this in detail because that took 3 webinars. That was at least 2.5 hours long. I don't have the time to get into all that in here. But I wanted to show you, this is kind of an addition to that, and it plays on more. We're explaining a little bit more on how to go in and build these things and really make them part of you. So I'm going to close that up right now, and I'm going to share those particular polls. And wow, I've got at least, if someone's coming in saying, wow, you have recorded webinars. Yes, we have recorded webinars. This is going to be recorded, so you can come back later on, and hopefully if we don't mess it up, that you can come in here and change this and start looking at that.
Every once in a while we goof up the recording.
Yes, yes, we have a tendency to do that. So there we have, getting back to these particular details in here. And the other thing is I'm clearing out all the questions. Man, hold on one second in here. We got a lot of things coming through, which is good.
Down to Shannon's here.
Okay, so we got that one.
There we go.
Okay, now we're back to the plan. Okay.
And I'm going to hold off on a couple of your questions, even though they're very good, because I think we're going to cover some of this. If we haven't, we'll loop back to you. We got a lot to cover here.
So this particular one, I'm going to start off the one that's earth, and we can see that inside here I have the earth, and it's at different sizes. So I can go to 36 inch. I went all the way down to 120 inches, just because in this detail I needed something that would do that. In here, I've got this one for concrete that allows me to go in and pull the concrete, and then I've got a thickened slab edge, concrete thickened edge, that I can go in and pull and change this to match my details and make it look the way I want it for my project that's in here. I'm going to start off by, and I even got one for gravel and soil, so I can see 2 different materials in here, and I can even flip those around by hitting the space bar. But I've got those 2 different materials that I'm pulling in, and that's going to note and change and everything else.
Thank you for your comment, Peenan.
So I have that in here to just show what's going on within the drawing. Okay, and still they're good. They represent what's going on. I can note them in detail. But let's look at what's kind of behind the scenes working on this, because then I'm going to show a little bit more of where we can pull this even further. So I have a concrete line. So I'm going to go in here and edit the family. So I've got these different things that allow me to change the start and end angles in here. I can also look at the different types of parameters that I have: a fatter line, a fatter face, start line, end line that's going to show up in here. And then I've got quite a few different sizes, and I've got the notes that automatically appear. So I'm going briefly through this. If you guys need a refresher on this, go back to the webinars. I'll show those at the end where you can find those. But we kind of cover all this stuff, how to create these different things in here and really get these start-end angles for this particular project. But that's going to be how we go in here and change these different things. And I just want to show you what's going on. So if I change that to a 45 and change that to a 45, oh shoot, of course it would say that now. Bring it into the project. That's usually the best. So I'll close that out. Fine, just switch back. There we go. So I'll make this one again. Everything works until you're about ready to...
Live television.
Yeah. So I'm going to create similar. And here we have this piece of concrete in here. And then I can come in and sometimes 45, or we can make it a -45 in there, so that's what's going on. Also inside here, I can do a start line and an end line. So by turning those on, I get the start or end line that's being put in here. And then I've got a fatter inner face and a fatter outer face. So you can see those lines change from fat to thin by selecting those. So I can go in there and do a fat line or a thin line. Allows me to start changing that stuff in here. So that's some really just simpler things that we can go in and do to really start getting these projects to look a little bit different as we're using them. All right, so now I'm going to jump into another one in here. Other things that we can do. So I got this Trellis Assembly in here. And again, these are all things that can be added in here. But I've got this one where I'm showing this bolt below. I don't know if anybody's ever done this before, but you've got this thing that I've got this bolt, but I'm going to send it to the back. So instead of bringing it to the front, I'll send it to the back. But wait a minute, I want to see the dashed line that's behind here. How do I get that to show up? So it's kind of another area to get into that I go back into my View tab. I can say Show Hidden Lines. So again, that's under View tab under the Show Hidden Lines area in here. So I go to Show Hidden Lines. I'm going to pick the element I want to show through. In this case, it's this guy, and then I pick that element, and now I get a dashed line that's in here. So that's another thing that we can go in and kind of just show elements behind other elements inside.
One of the things, Shannon asks, is that concrete line something you created, or is it out of the box? Well, everything we try and do in our webinars is out of the box, so that you don't have to, go buy something or go hunt down a routine or go do this or that. These are things that Brian kind of just figured out how to do.
Yeah, and
we're just showing you.
I guess what I'm going to tell you is this is something I created by using something out of the box.
Right.
So inside here, what this was is
and for $9.95.
Yeah, I can sell it to you. No, it is something. Go back to the original webinars with Mackie, but what it is I started with the JIP. I think the JIP is probably the easiest, but now I have my own template that's just kind of start a detailed item, and it's blank, and it just has a pattern in here. So if I go back into this, and I'll dissect this a little bit more, we have different lines in here, but we also have a filled region, and that's what this is made up of, is just a filled region. I guess it's like a tab. There were concrete filled region that's put in here, and then I've got different reference planes in here that I'm snapping to, and different reference lines. So here's a reference line that controls the end angles, different lengths, and I can do like the midpoint, or I can do the center of this object, or if I want to do a embed depth, I've got all kind of this stuff built in here that's changing this. And then when I can change things and turn them on and off in different visibilities. Again, I'll have you refer to the other webinars to go through that. So we'll look at that. And if you want to know more, come in. We can, definitely help with developing more specific for your stuff that's inside here. Because there are things that I've done in my line of work, let's say, such as this particular log and this log wall. These are items that were created in here. So create similar element, I draw a line, and it creates a whole wall assembly based on log. And then inside here, I can say, well, does it have a chinking on? I can take care of the chinking and get the one at the start if it doesn't need it. So I can turn that on and off for developing that within my my assemblies or whatever I happen to do in my work. I've also got another one for side angle in here, and let's just look at what this is. And all it is just different filled regions just to create a different gradient, because Revit will not do gradients, at least not yet, to do this particular style. So I've got this in here that it's going to divide these up so that I can build different types of log walls. And again, the same parameter, am I having a heavy line at the beginning and the end of this particular item. Same thing with this one in here. It's kind of a one log segment that gets repeated over and over again, and I kind of have two different types that rotate slightly just to get that particular element in here. And then you do things like arrays and stuff like that to really get these things to be built. But that's the beauty of putting this in here. And then when I go to tag it, it automatically is going to tell me the node of what that wall is, and I can point it at any of these elements within my project, and it's automatically going to say, oh, I'm this, I'm that particular element in here, and I've got all those things. If I change that element size, it's going to change that in here. But let's get back to kind of the graphics and what's involved with this project. So I'm going to delete that note in there. All right, so I'm going to jump into.
Let me get to a couple of these questions before they get too far out of context here. Jason asked up a little bit earlier, is that ground plane in your previous detail there that you just tagged a filled region or a modeling element?
This is a detail element. So everything inside here, these are all detail elements. When I go into my annotate, they're all detail components that we built inside the model. So everything, even a line, I am not going to do a line. If I have a piece of flashing or a membrane, I am going to come in here and draw that as a detail element. It is not a line. We're getting out of using lines. Because what this allows me to do is I can go in and label this, and here you can see this is the Grace Bitchathane line. And as I move that around, that particular note's moving in there. And if I come in and I select this and I change that building membrane to ice and water shield, it says Grace Ice and Water Shield. You see that note change. It's probably not a good idea, down at the foundation, but we can switch that out and really get that to play within our drawings. We've got this one for gravel and drainage boards in here. So if I come in and I select this 2-inch rigid drainage board, and let's say I needed another one, I can hit duplicate. Maybe I need it to be 3 inches for some reason. So I'll go in here and hit 3 inches, and then write my note so it says the right thing. So I'll go back into the 2 inches so that it would list the part in here for this. So my drainage board, now if I go to 3 inches, I still get the drainage board. But maybe this time I want to say it's 3 inches. So now I hit OK. Now I get 3 inches. Forgot to change the actual size. So yeah, make sure that that's 3 inches. But we can see all this is built in a family. Now it says 3-inch board. And if I go back to the 2-inch, that note's going to change back to the way it was. So this is really getting us to having that capability, that power within our models or within our details, that we can change all this stuff in here. Now where this can go, where this can really be driving us in a different avenue is this one where I have this typical wall section. Now I'm going to show you what this is. This is one element that's actually made up of many elements.
Let me interrupt real quick because Clint asked just real quick, where was the create similar element?
Oh, so anytime you select an object, you go right click and you say create similar. So it doesn't matter what the object is, you go in there and hit create similar. So you guys are learning all kinds of tricks today that we just go really fast through. So anything you want to do, you want to create similar, you just select that object, right click, hit create similar. So for this particular wall, all it is one line that I draw, and I could draw this line type in here, make sure it's straight. And as I draw that, it's going to draw that wall, and it has all the different parts. Well, probably didn't know this, but if I come inside here, what I can go and do is I've got this one, it's showing stone, but I'm going to go in here and show stucco. And then this one's got stucco, that one's got stone, and we can see we have that in here. And I've got this nice curvy little line in here showing the outside of the stucco and the stucco band. And inside here, if we look a little bit more, I've got kind of a sand hatch going halfway through and then getting into more of a gypsum hatch on the outside. So it gives me kind of a different effect inside here. What this is made up of different elements. So if I go in here, I can tag this whole thing as a wall assembly. And that's great, awesome. But what I can do in addition to that is if I come in here and I use the tab key, I can touch one of the parts, the stucco, I got the 2x4, 2x6 wall construction. Let's see if I can get in here and should be able to get to the ply. Oh man, I really jacked up. Okay, so I got to get the notes in the right spot. I'm having fun today, so I need to switch back on that one. But I've got the 5/8" ply, I've got the gyp board, all those will come in here and, oh, that is the ply. I messed up one of my notes. So I got to switch the notes around, but you can see it's all working inside here, and they all tag based on the material that's in here. So the wall assembly would label out its own, and then each individual part has its own particular thing that's going on. So let's look at how this was kind of assembled to put it in here. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to hit Edit Family and come inside. Now this is similar to the other families that we've been looking at in here, but what I have is this particular area is the nominal cut lumber that we get out of the box. I just added some notes to it. Here is just the generic gypsum wallboard that's added in here. I've got this one for the stucco that's in here. I've got one for a metal panel, and I've got this one for stone veneer. So as I'm building this, they have different parts that are making up, and they're all labeled with what's going on. So we can do things like put this inside of our projects to really make them seen. Other things that I'm doing inside here, if I go into this type and I say, oh, okay, I've got a 2x6 wall, but maybe I want to go to a 2x4 wall, I can go in here. Oh, the note didn't change. I still have to fix that one, so I apologize. But it changed to 2x8, should be 2x4, but we can see all the parts adjusted automatically. I got to go back and change my notes. But I've got this in here. I've got the 2x8 wall. Now if I go back in, I can select that and change that back to my 2x6 wall or a 3x6 wall. I don't know if I have the notes for that one because I haven't built notes for everything in here. 2x6 wall. And I've got the note to say 2x6 wall construction. Automatically changes out.
And by the way, the create similar, you can also just type in CS if you're more of a keyboard shortcut type man or woman.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not getting to all those things in there, but this really gives us a nice quality. All I drew was a line, and I'm able to come in here and with one line, draw a whole wall assembly in here and start changing it. Having the ability to make it 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. Is it stone? Is it stucco? Is it metal panel? All that's built into this different wall type out there, and it's got, got all the pieces in there, and it's very lightweight in the fact that it's all 2D elements that we can go in and change. All right. This kind of led me to go, okay, what more can we do with these different components in here? And I'm going to come inside. You can see there's my typical wall section, so I can build more of those. And I've got one in here, and there it is. So I've got different line types in here, and I've got this one. It's called a wiggle line. So as I draw this line, it has overshoots automatically built into it, but I can go in here and draw this particular line, and it would have a little bit of a wiggle inside. But what's nice about it is this line, I can maybe just make it a medium or a light line in there. Give it little overshoots, but it will dimension to the outside edges. So if I come inside and I go to a line, I can actually measure an exact distance from this element to something else. And if I were to change this one from this type of line to another line weight, let's see where I got. They're flashing in here. Concrete French drain. It's always fun when you have so many different types of elements inside here. And I'm hoping this is going to change soon. Oh.
Chuck, these are all in the 2015 software. They're part of the, Sketchy Lines and some of the other
there we go,
little more creative line types that you can get in the 2015 package.
Yeah. In fact,
all out of the box.
All out of the box. Most of these I actually try to build in 13 or 14 so that I can use it in different versions of the software, because like you, I have projects in different versions of the software. So if I can build it in an earlier version, I will. Most of these I built in 13, maybe even 14 for some of them, so that I can use them all. And that's a good practice. When you're building these families, build them in an earlier version and then go back in and upgrade them to other versions so you can use them if you have projects in other phases. But I want to show that this wiggle line is like every other element that we've been looking at. So here's the membrane layer, and here's this. So if I wanted to, I can go to match properties, match this guy to that, and he just changes that other line type in here, or change it back. So I have this in, it just gives it a little bit of a wiggle that I can go in and draw that. And that's kind of how this other stucco edge was drawn. So it has kind of this edge that's free-flowing within the project that I can go in and kind of change this out. And then I have the ability to have this one with gaps or no gaps. So I have this one in here that I can say with a gap, and it gives me that little gap edge inside my project in there. So I can go in and say maybe I have a heavy line with a heavy overshoot, because you want to have that overshoot in here. And then I've got the space bar that I can flip it around, and maybe I want to have it wiggle one way or another. And I've got different wiggles that I'm going to be building if I like this. I can use this to draw a 2x4. So I can use these types of lines when I go in to draw a 2x4 or 2x6. I can have it so it has this little wiggle element and kind of have more of a free-flowing line type to it. It doesn't have to be in the project. I can do this in other places throughout the drawings. And I think this is really going to get us going into a good direction for later on. So this is going to be hopefully something we can start taking advantage of in here. Now, I'm going to open up this family just to show you what's going on, but when I get inside here, there's a lot, I'm going to tell you there's a lot going on in here. So this is all the parts for the family, and it's got about 5 different lines that are drawn on top. It's got a different way so I can have line extensions for overshoots and have different thicknesses on them. So if you guys want to see more, let me know, please, and I will go further into these areas. But I've got a couple more things that I definitely want to show you before time runs out, and you guys all have to leave me inside here. But I wanted to show you what's going on, and please, 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 if you can, respond if you guys are liking this. We're seeing a lot of people chatting a lot. That's why we're constantly stopping to look at the different parts. But we've got different ways of just giving us more control over drawings, more ways of identifying what kind of style we're getting in here. How do we really tweak this to be a little bit more? Because you can see here at 1 inch, yeah, I'm starting to introduce line weights, but if I really start looking in this even more, what I was hoping to get in and do is actually start introducing shading and different other patterns, and we're just running out of time for doing that. Okay.
Brian, real quick, we got several things we want to show you, and there is just an onslaught of questions, and thank you very much for all those questions. And what I'm going to tell you is that so we can show you the whole webinar here, we will have this recorded, and hopefully.
Yeah, it says recording, so we're good at the moment.
We're pretty good at it. Once in a while, though, with all these questions, what we will promise that we will do, Beverly, Ryan, Rick, all of you, Michael, we'll take a look at your questions after the webinar and send you an answer if we don't get to yours personally, because there's just too many. We could go for another hour.
Yeah, the question list, this is probably one of the better question lists we've had in a long time. So apparently I've hit a good topic. I thought it was great, but I wasn't sure how you guys would respond in here. Probably one of the highest intended ones we had too.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got that in here. I guess what I could do is we'll just keep going, and we might run over 10 minutes if you guys want to.
You've got some good stuff here, so I don't want to cut it short because of that.
Yeah. Let's see. The wiggle, for specific, the wiggle question, no, that was something I built. It is based off of everything out of the box, though. So, yes, it's kind of everything's based on something out of the box. I didn't buy anything. I didn't use any special things or whatever. It's just stuff I've been thinking of for a long time, and I'm like, I'm going to start doing this for my own projects. I don't know if anybody else likes this or not, so let's give it a shot and see what's going on. And apparently you guys are on board with me. This looks drab. Let's clean it up. Let's make things look better. Let's do some more things that look like hand. Okay, now I'm going to push it a little bit differently, and I'm going to take us into another realm in here. If you guys just follow along with me, we will try to get to your questions, but I think I want to show this other part.
And Greg, real quick, these details, I don't know. I know that Mr. Mackey, who you know well, is offering some detailing creation services and so forth, and you might get a hold of him.
Yeah, these are things that actually I've been teaching in class. So if you guys want to come in and start looking at this, because I know Mackie and we have discussions on how to get this done, and I have a little bit different take than Mackie does, and I think it has to do with just having that architectural background. He's a very strict way, Paynen on how to go to bed and do this, and I'm thinking, okay, if we can change the line weights a little bit different and have a little bit more style to this, we can get this to show a little bit different. Again, I'm going to go back to what I originally said. We're going to go back to the Ching book and what's in there, and I want to dive into that a little bit more, and that's kind of where I'm heading in this, and start showing some different techniques and stuff that's out here. Some of this is, again, very, very, very direct from those webinars, and I want you guys to go into those webinars and really get into that. But we're going to see a little bit different transition. So now I'm going to take us into a different area.
Or come to one of our detail classes.
Or come to one of the detail classes. Yes, definitely. So here's some other stuff that's getting inside the project. So let me get to that now. Okay, so I'm going to get into this graphics. And before I get to that one, I'm going to get to this one. Okay, so some very basic things in here that I want to cover. All right, so here are 3 elevations that are in our drawings, and this one I'm going to have to take a little bit from Steve Stafford for directing us in this area. But what we have in here is I've got a little bit different style that I actually have a background that runs between all of them, and I've gone in and kind of changed some things to make like purple windows and stuff like that. So if we want to start looking at these drawings, I'm going to go in here and activate the view, but remember what we did before? We came inside and we said, okay, let's go in here to the graphic display options, and some of the things that we can go in and do. Whoops, I got this locked into elevation, so I'm going to set that to none at the moment, so I don't get myself locked out. But now that I'm in here, I can go inside, go to the graphic display, come in here, I've got that set to the wide line, so now I'm starting to pump up those line weights. Whoops, wide lines in here. And if that's not enough, maybe you come in and use some of the other line weights that you developed. But that's going to start getting these things to pump up a little bit more. And then going in and changing the glazing so that it's got this purple hue to it or whatever it happens to be. It doesn't have to be purple, but that's one I like using a lot for some of my renderings in here. So we've got that inside. We're starting using ambient shadows, starting to include other shadows in here, and that really starts to get a nicer quality of what's going on. Now, some other things that are new out there that we want to start to explore is these other things like sketchy lines. I know that people are really hip on this stuff, and I'm kind of on the edge. Okay, so we can go in here and start using the sketchy lines. So I select that, and then I can do things like jitters. So I'm going to pump that up and hit OK and see what we get. We get this thing that looks kind of like SketchUp, where it's kind of doing this element where you're drawing, instead of 1 line, you're drawing like 5 lines. Now, I never in my career hand drafting drew 5 lines to represent 1. I just used a different pen weight and maybe had a little bit different squiggle. So this is one of those things. Maybe I'm going to go back and redraw this with my wiggly line instead and start using that to kind of play into this to really get a more dramatic area. I'm not a fan of this jitter, but let's see what we can do with it. So we're inside here. I got the jitter, and let me maybe I lay off on the coffee a little bit, and I come down to a 2, so I'm not as jittery. So that might have some potential in here. So that's what jittery is going to kind of go and do, and we can see how it's changing that up. And I'm going to bring that back down to 0. But what I did like is I got this thing, line extensions. I really like this. So I can come in here and start putting line extensions on in my drawings, and I start getting things like this happening. And I really like that. I think this gives us a lot more class in our drawings and really starts to make things stand out. And then if I really want this to pop out some more, I might come inside here and go back to the modify in here and say, oh, well, I really want to pump this up and make it something else. And I don't have another line weight in here, but I can make that a dotted line or something, or really enhance that. And what you also find is like 5 lines on top of 1, so you might have to do that for quite a few things. But there's ways to go in here and start really changing this up. Now, another option that was available in here when we get into that graphics area is to get in and we can turn on backgrounds. And I can make a gradient background in here and hit apply, and you'll see, oh, there's a sky, and it looks cool, and it's just for this rendering. Well, you see this guy in the back? All he was, and I'll actually turn that other background off, is another elevation. So let me deactivate this view here. So all this is its own elevation. So all I did was make another elevation. Let me go find that. And it's just this shape. It's just that background. So now I could come in and drop this in there within my drawing. And again, because we're able to see these backgrounds, one of the other cool things that you guys can do, we can edit that crop area. And I've got that line, and I can make it do all kinds of weird shapes if you really wanted to. You can come out and do, something that does this instead. And then you've got that as your background. So I'll unhide that, close this view here, and now I've got this odd-shaped element in the background. But it's going through all 3 of my elevations, and I'm really starting to pull my drawings together, really starting to have kind of a nicer quality to what's going on. I see what Mario is saying. Yeah, sketchy lines, hem. Yeah, you're right. For me, I'm not a fan of the sketchy lines, but again, for the overshoots, I think that's great. So getting back in here, what else?
Well, and I think what's important to mention is that this webinar is really about, how do you take some of these tools, and yeah, sketching lines, maybe everybody kind of goes, but if it's appropriate for your work or your studio or whatever, you want to be a little more creative and so forth, and you can push the boundaries a little bit, whether it's on details or elevation views or renderings or whatever. We're trying to show you some of those things that give your studio a little bit of that uniqueness that you've all craved for a long time.
Yeah, because a lot of you are saying, hey, I want mine to stand out against someone else. So now that you're all in this webinar, you'll all be different like somebody else. No, I'm just kidding.
And Payne, yes, it is funny. Once we figured out who it really was on there, it was all the funnier.
Exactly. All right. So, yeah, Sketchy Lines. I'm not a fan of jitter, but I like extensions, so we're using that. Other things you get into is start looking at the lighting in here in the photographic exposure. I think these are some very underused areas. And for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of bring us into another realm. I'm just going to show you some very quick things that we can do. This was kind of the tag on, like pushing it a little bit further than what we've intended. You might have tended before, but I'm just saying if I can push it this far, you guys can do a little bit rest. So we'll get into the renderings in here. And so we can see these are kind of this is the approach, kind of dark. Sorry, I apologize for that. But this is the approach that we're seeing in here, and this is the approach with Sketchy Lines. So maybe you're liking that a little bit more, but that's just kind of some things that we can see. Now, one of the things it doesn't quite do really well are things like railings. It's not affecting this car. It's not affecting the tree. These entourage elements, the RCP elements are not being affected by it. The other thing is just kind of how it works. Topo is not a great thing for it, so that's kind of the Sketchy Lines in here. And again, we have this one right here. So we have the from the yard, and then again another one showing from the yard with those Sketchy Lines. And then other things you can do, like I went in and I just painted the roof and gave it just a red color, kind of pop it out a little bit. So that's some other things to do. Now, if you really want to start pushing this even more, I'm gonna end it with kind of where I've been going with this. So here's what I've got. We're able to go in and we've been drawing with hand by a long time. We're really trying to push so there's this hand element of sketching in here. But I started playing with the graphics of the drawing in here. So I'm going to go in here and activate the view. And we can see this is the inside the view in here, but I want to show you what I've been messing with. So inside the graphic display options, we're going to see different things like lighting and the photo exposure. We'll start seeing both of this. But in here I've got this set to winter solstice, and I started playing with all the suns and the ambient lighting, and I really started tweaking this around a little bit. And I've turned on my shadows, and I married a very sharp shadow contrast. And I started looking at this and going, wow, you know what this kind of looks like? It's like a graphic novel. Or it starts getting into these things, like have you ever seen that movie Sin City or any of those other areas where it's very sharp, or you start getting into anime or any of those areas that are quite popular, it starts to carry on that feel. And I said, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, let's see what we can do with this. So this kind of transitioned to a little bit more, and I said, oh, okay, well, let's look at something like this. And I really started pumping it up. And I said, okay. So I even got my little arrows here to swipe over. So started skewing the colors a bit more. So I'll go inside here and I start activating the colors a little bit more. Oops, wrong area. So now that we're in here and really getting the lighting, starting to tweak the lightings, but I started getting the photographic exposure and the color correction and start tweaking these to a really far degree. And it took a lot of work to try to see what was good, what wasn't good. And I said, wow, this kind of looks pretty, it's interesting for me, and I think it's interesting for quite a few other people. I've had some good responses that this is going to work. Now, does this work for construction documents? No, I'm not saying we're going to do this for construction documents, but it does work for presentations. And I started to give myself a little bit more appeal to a different market that I might be after. So I said, oh, I like this. I'm liking where this is going on here. I'm still inside the model. I said, wait a minute, can I pull this even more? And the answer was equivocally, yeah, because I'm going to, and I'm a Brian like every other Brian.
So we invited Roy and Andy over.
And we just said, okay, let's just go for a full pop art approach to this. You know, and this is kind of what I'm coming up with. And I personally, I fell in love with this thing when I started doing stuff like this. So this is rendered, and I start getting the red dots, which is really iconic for this type of imagery in here. And we start pulling it into this type of realm. Now, I'm not suggesting you guys go out and do this and really tweak it to this degree, but if you just scale it back a little bit and you start playing with those overshoots and you start getting the hyper extending the colors a bit more to extreme realms and really start to sharpen up those colors, we're going to get a very different type of feel to our drawings and a very different type of feel to what we can present to our audience, and really start to give it that wow factor, that pow that we're looking for, to really give us some excitement. And now we can start getting into presenting in different ways that we haven't thought of. Maybe instead of the traditional way of presenting a really contemporary house, what if I gave them more of a graphic novel or a comic that I'm going into, and I'm transitioning your space by, giving them different icons and arrows and stuff that are really flying through and giving myself a sense of movement. Hey, we go here, we go down the hall. What do we see? This is the room we see. This is your bedroom. That's the sink. Oh my gosh. And then you have, some gal going, oh my gosh, or whatever it happens to be, that we can really play into this bit with our project. So I'm looking that I might be doing this a bit more, but at least in a lot of these different areas, and really exploring this graphic side, because Sketchy Lines is new. We're starting, the backgrounds is relatively new. It's been out for a couple of years. Starting to look at the different exposures we can get for our projects. And I think this is something that we can all explore a little bit more, and I'm happy to do the go off the deep end for a while and play, just to bring you guys back and show you, hey, this is what we can do. Whether it's in the detail end, and we're starting to look at how we do details and how we're going to do these little sketchy elements and make it more hand rendering, or maybe we go to the totally opposite. We're going to the hard edge, the graphics, and to play into both fields, and to take advantage of what we've been doing with our presentations and our drawings, and take advantage of what the software can do, because this is something that was really hard to do by hand, but it's very easy to do with the computer. It's very easy to do with the stuff in here. I've got one more webinar one more thing that I'd love for you guys to say, and it's one more poll, and I just want to get something out there and just get your guys' take on this. So if you guys wouldn't mind responding to this poll, and believe me, I can take the brutalness of what you've got out there. And I just want to see what the audience is, because today we have a huge audience. I mean, we
do.
We've been quite really, well, and most of you have stayed on board, even though
really overwhelming in a webinar to get this many comments and questions.
Yeah, the questions keep coming too, and we apologize for not getting them. Unfortunately, I have something to go to. I have to be in Cheyenne or in Casper, and by the end of the day, so I got to jam.
We will get back on your questions, though, and we will send you an answer.
All right. I'm going to close this out right now.
James, thank you for your comment. That's very nice.
So I'm going to share that with you guys. So I'm happy to see this. I know that this doesn't pertain to everybody, so it's not that I'm going to stop doing those other webinars. So if you got turned off by something I was doing on here, I will present the other stuff too. We're not going to dive away from that, but I wanted to get something that I was hearing a lot of, hey, my projects look like everybody else's projects.
That's one of the most common things we hear is, how do I make this my own? And so we're trying to give you some ideas of that.
And you can see that this really quickly can be something that you can own, that you can do on your project. So,
and so with that, Clint says, oh, the first Revit comic strip. So with that, we're going to say, hibbity-bitty-bee. That's all, folks.
So yeah, there you go. Other events, I will show you really quick the other webinars. If you guys want to see where the detailing webinars are, those are great. Those are very important. You're going to build off of those. This was kind of an extension of that. So for those of you still on, I'll show those to you now. Maybe we have time for a couple of questions real quick while I'm pulling that up, Stan.
Well, most of these answers are going to be pretty detailed, and
okay.
Yes, James, you can. That's a simple question. Yes, you can request webinar topics. In fact, we look forward to it. Another thing that we're starting next year, we'll be starting right after the first of the year. We've got a couple people lined up already, but we're going to start what we call our Revit or our CAD-1 Masters series, and that will be asking folks like you to perhaps put together a webinar. We'll compensate you to some degree for it, and put together a webinar on things you're working on or things that you know very well that can help the overall community. It'll be kind of a virtual users group, I suppose, but we know that there are people out there who do fantastic things that just aren't getting out to the world, and it's not like we know it all. So if you're interested, give me a shout.
We'd love to see what you guys have to do out there, and it's something that Stan and I are definitely looking forward to yeah, if you guys, again, have any questions on different topics
Can you
or
flip
anything else,
back to the
the webinar,
page?
I will do that right now. So there it is, webinars. These are the topics. So if you start at CAD-1, you flip over to webinars, it's going to open up another browser that will take you to the webinars, and you can see that we have our, next week I'm doing topo, so there'll be advanced topo stuff. We'll be doing a lot of different things in there, and that'll lead on to the last one I did, so you'll have to be ready for those. And then once you click on there,
the poll's still showing. So I guess we're not.
Sorry. There we go. Hey, there we go. Sorry, guys. So webinars, and then when you click on that, you can click on over to the webinar archives. And then once you're on the webinar archives, again, this is on our website, you'll click on the archives right there, and that'll take you to the archives. And then we have our details in Revit, part 1, part 2, part 3. And I will tell you, one's a good overview, but you could start with part 2 and part 3, and that'll give you guys a really good background on where we're going. Again, it's not going to show you everything. That's what we're here for. If you guys want to see more, come in. Let us know. We're definitely pushing, trying to get people in this area.
And you can also go to YouTube and then type in CAD-1. It'll bring up our CAD-1 page, and then from there you can do some searching on details, so forth, because they're all linked to the YouTube page.
All right, so
all right,
bye
folks.
for now.
And we will do all we can to get your questions answered in the very near future. Thank you.